Last Friday at UFC on FX, Demetrious Johnson got a unanimous decision victory over Ian McCall, and unlike their first fight, the scores were actually read correctly this time. Jorge, how did Johnson win so convincingly?
I felt like he did all the proper adjustments for this fight. He controlled every aspect of the fight. Controlled the pace, the takedowns, the stand-up. Every single aspect of this fight, Demetrious controlled. I thought he did get a 30-27. Some of those rounds could have gone even worse.
Yeah, you know, the thing that impressed me about Demetrious Johnson was a couple of times on those counters, he just kind of planted and waited for McCall to come into him and charge, and then just landed, especially in that first round, landed that big right hand. And he uses wrestling and spots to kind of, you know, pick up some points with the judges. So, you know, he made the proper adjustments, I thought, and I thought McCall looked very similar to his first fight.
Well, it's the flyweight tournament. It sets up a championship match against Joseph Benavidez versus Johnson for the first ever title. How do you feel this fight stacks up?
It's going to be a good fight. I think Benavidez is a good fighter. I just think Johnson's a little bit better. I think he's a more well-rounded fighter of the two. He's faster, and I think he has a slight into submissions. Yeah,
you know, I still look at Joseph Benavidez. I still have him maybe in the top 10 pound-for-pound fighters. He was fighting at a division at 135. He was still, you know, finishing guys in that division. His only losses come to Dominic Cruz twice. I just think that he has more tools overall for Johnson. But Johnson is pretty sneaky in what he does. You mentioned, he's very quick. So, you know, that fight's going to be very exciting for the flyweight, you know, going into that fight.
Well, exciting is a good word to use about the flyweight division, but how popular will it be, especially when it comes to UFC pay-per-views? Can they main event pay-per-views for the UFC, considering there's not very many knockouts, there's not very many submissions?
I think it's going to be tough for the flyweights to do that for that very reason. People want to see excitement, and it's not that they don't bring excitement; it's that they don't have the big knockouts and the flashy submissions that people are looking for. The lightweights tend to be more of smaller guys that can give and take a lot more and end up in decisions. As a fan, I'm personally looking for the big knockout and the submission.
Yeah, and I would say, like, to counter that a little bit, you could take a look at Joseph Benavidez, and he has finished in his last 6 victories. He's finished 4 of his guys. He was able to submit Miguel Torres, knock out Yuri Shitani, and Ronnie Yaya. So he does have some power. But you take a look at the lighter weight classes in general. You know, Jose Aldo's only had 1 headlining fight so far in the UFC, and that was because he was fighting in Brazil at UFC 142. Dominic Cruz has won 10 in a row. Has only had one headlining fight. That was UFC 132 against Uriah Faber, mostly because of Faber. So it is a tough sell. The smaller guys are a tougher sell in the UFC.
Don't hate on the little guys. I'm going to tell them that you said they watch this show. Now time for our long road to victory. Brazilian Eric Silva, who you just saw, looking to make a name for himself in UFC. 27 years old, 14-2 MMA record, and back on June 8th, he made his U.S. debut and defeated Charlie Brenneman with a rear naked choke in the first round. Jorge, if you're bringing up one of these young up-and-comers, you're the manager. How do you handle their career, especially in the early stages?
I'm going to pick and choose fights that I think are going to best suit my fighter. I'm going to look at across the board, and I'm going to pick guys that I think he's going to suit up with, that are going to challenge him, but build him up. I want to build his confidence, and I want him to get better, and I want him to get the experience of being in front of the crowd, bigger crowd, start in the prelims, then move up to the spike shows or the ones on Facebook, whatever it may be, until he gets to the main card, and then let him shine.
That sounds great and all, right, Chuck, but is that feasible in today's UFC?
Unfortunately, it's a lot harder in today's UFC. First of all, the volume of fight cards that they have and the volume of you know, fights that they need to put on those cards, a lot of these guys can't pick and choose the way that they once probably could. And also, you know, it's hard for the fighter these days in their management to say no to fights if it's a fight that may be a little over their head, just given that, you know, where are you going to go if you're not in the UFC? If you tell the UFC, no, where are you going to go right now besides the UFC? So a lot of these guys, you are seeing it all over, have to take the fights that they're, you know, that are presented to them, and some of the prospects are falling.
Yeah, and remember Shogun Rua, as Jorge mentioned a while ago, said, "I'm not fighting Glover Teixeira. I'll quit the UFC." So I guess he's going to walk away from a lot of money. But all right.